Nobody and nothing will affect you again. Carl Jung's ultimate secret. There's something deep inside you that you've been carrying your entire life without realizing it. It's not your job. It's not your name. It's not even your personality. It's the invisible framework that decides how you react to everything: criticism, praise, abandonment, love, betrayal, and even silence. And most people go their whole lives never questioning it. They think the world affects them because that's just how life works. Someone insults you, you feel offended. Someone ignores you, you feel abandoned. A failure happens, you collapse inside. But what if I told you, with absolute clarity, that it's not the world that's affecting you? It's you, reacting to your own reflection, your inner shadow projected onto the world around you. But Carl Jung, the towering figure of modern psychology, called this projection, and understanding it might be the most liberating insight you'll ever hear. Because once you truly see it, once you grasp what it means, you realize that nobody and nothing ever had control over you. You gave it to them unconsciously. And you can take it back. We live in a world addicted to emotional reaction. It's almost celebrated. If you're offended, that means you care. If you're angry, you must be standing up for something. If you're broken, someone else must have broken you. But Jung took a scalpel to that narrative. He said, what you react to with intensity out there is something unresolved in here. You are never seeing people as they are, you are seeing people through the lens of your own inner wounds. And until you bring that into consciousness, the world will keep triggering you, and you'll keep thinking it's the world's fault. Let's bring this down to something real. Imagine someone criticizes your work. Immediately you feel a surge, defensiveness, embarrassment, maybe even rage. But pause. Ask yourself, is it the criticism that hurts or the voice in your head that's been echoing that same doubt for years? The voice that says, you're not good enough. Jung would tell you this isn't about the critic. It's about you. That person just pressed on a bruise that was already there. That emotional bruise. That's your shadow, the part of yourself you've rejected, suppressed, or refused to acknowledge. The more unaware you are of your shadow, the more power other people have to push your buttons. And the ultimate secret. The moment you make your shadow conscious, the buttons disappear. The pain dissolves. The world loses its grip on your emotions.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
That's why Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that for a second. Every reaction, every drama, every emotional spiral you think is happening to you could actually be your own unconscious mind pulling the strings. And you'll keep calling it unfair. You'll keep saying, people are toxic, or I always get betrayed, or nothing ever works out for me. But none of that is fate. It's a loop, and a loop that only breaks when you stop looking out there for freedom and start looking in here for the real cause. So what does this actually mean in practice? And it means that emotional freedom isn't about becoming indifferent. It's not about building walls or pretending things don't hurt. It's about seeing clearly. It's about knowing that the way you experience the world is always filtered through your inner world, and that the cleaner your inner world becomes, and the less chaos the outer world can create. That's why Jung believed individuation, the process of integrating your unconscious, is not just psychology. It's a spiritual path. A path toward inner mastery, where nothing that doesn't belong to you can affect you anymore. Ask yourself something now. Who or what affects you the most? Is it a certain person? A certain pattern in relationships? A fear of being ignored, abandoned, dismissed? What if those aren't random issues in your life? What if they're mirrors, showing you parts of yourself that still need attention, compassion, and ownership? What if the most irritating people in your life are unknowingly revealing the exact work you still have to do on yourself? When Jung talked about wholeness, he didn't mean perfection. He meant reclaiming what you've disowned, bringing back the pieces of yourself that you've projected onto others, the things you admire and the things you hate, the strength you see in someone else. It's in you. The cruelty that crushes you. It's in you too, not to shame you but to free you. Because once you own your shadow, you stop being surprised by the world. You stop flinching at every insult. You stop needing constant approval. You stop carrying the burden of other people's opinions like they define you. Imagine walking through life like that, not numb, not closed, but so aware of who you are that no external drama can pierce your center. That's not arrogance. That's not denial. That's what Jung would call individuation. And it is the ultimate secret to psychological freedom, emotional alchemy, how to turn triggers into tools for transformation. Let's take this deeper. If Carl Jung taught us that the people and situations that trigger us are really just reflections of our own unconscious material, then what are we supposed to do with that knowledge? How do we actually work with it, instead of just intellectualizing it? This is where the real work begins, the transformation of pain into power, the refining of reaction into realization. And that process, Jung would say, is a kind of emotional alchemy. You take what is raw, reactive, and unconscious, and you make it conscious, contained, and ultimately transformative. A trigger is not a curse. It's a clue, and most people treat their triggers like enemies. They avoid them. They blame others for them. They construct entire belief systems around the idea that the world should never trigger them. But Jung saw a trigger as a sacred signal, a knock at the door of your shadow saying, "Hey, you're still bleeding here." And when you stop running from that signal and instead turn toward it with curiosity and courage, you begin the process of individuation, becoming a more whole, a conscious human being. Let's say you get angry when someone dismisses your ideas. You feel shut down, invalidated. The pain is real. But instead of asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" Jung would want you to ask, "Why does this wound me so deeply?" Is it because, somewhere inside, you believe your voice doesn't matter? Is it because you grew up being talked over? Is it because you equate disagreement with rejection? The moment you ask that question, you step out of the victim role. You stop seeing life as something that happens to you and begin seeing it as something that reflects you. That's emotional alchemy. That's turning a painful pattern into insight. Now, here's the kicker. Once you see the root of your reaction, it doesn't own you anymore. You still feel the emotion, it still rises, it still knocks, but now you have a choice. You can say, "Ah, there you are. I know you. I've met you before. But you don't get to drive this time." Jung's insight was that you don't kill your shadow, you befriend it. You listen to what it's been trying to tell you, because every shadow holds a gift. Every part of you that was exiled holds energy, passion, creativity, strength. The anger you've suppressed could be the fire you need to speak your truth. The fear you've ignored might be the compass that points to your purpose. But if you're always triggered and never curious, you'll never unlock those gifts. This is why Jung's path to freedom is so different from the way we're taught to deal with emotions today. We're told to manage emotions, regulate them, avoid negativity. But Jung would ask, why is it there in the first place? What is it pointing to? The psyche, he believed, is always trying to move toward wholeness. Even your pain is trying to heal you. Even your rage is a messenger. The question is, will you open the letter? Triggers don't mean you're broken. They mean something important is surfacing. A real line is can do. And that means something can be healed. Think of it like gold trapped in mud. Most people just feel the mud and say, oof, not again. But the philosopher, the inner alchemist, digs. You want to know why it hurts, where it started, what part of you it belongs to, because once you understand it, you can integrate it. And once it's integrated, nobody on the outside can use it against you. Now ask yourself this, what's your most common emotional reaction? Is it jealousy, insecurity, anger, defensiveness? What if, instead of labeling that reaction as bad, you treated it like a sacred map? A map leading you back to the parts of yourself you've buried or denied. The world will still challenge you. People will still disappoint you. Life will still bring its storms. But if you've done this inner work, you'll no longer be at the mercy of those storms. You'll stand in them, anchored not because you're unfeeling, but because you're aware. And that awareness is the superpower. That's what Jung meant when he said that no one can illuminate the darkness by ignoring it. But you have to face it. And then, astonishingly, it becomes light. This is what it means to be psychologically untouchable. Not cold, not detached, but deeply grounded in your own truth. And that's a level of power that can't be faked. The end of projection, how to reclaim your peace by reclaiming yourself once you've begun the process of emotional alchemy. But once you've turned your triggers into insight and started to sit with your reactions instead of being ruled by them, you arrive at one of Carl Jung's most transformative ideas, the end of projection. This is where everything changes, because until now, most of what you thought was reality was actually a mirror. What you admired in others, what you hated, what you feared, what you judged, it was all filtered through your unconscious assumptions. And Jung believed that as long as we are projecting parts of ourselves onto others, we can never be truly at peace. Projection, in Jungian terms, is the unconscious act of assigning your own qualities, both light and shadow, onto someone else. When you admire someone, when you envy them, when you despise them, there's a good chance you're seeing something within yourself, something you haven't yet accepted or integrated. The people who affect us most deeply aren't random. They activate something personal, something unhealed. And if you're unaware of this mechanism, you will keep mistaking your own inner reality for someone else's behavior. You will keep reacting to yourself, reflected back at you by the world. Here's the life-changing part. When you end projection, you reclaim everything. You reclaim your strength from the people you envy. You reclaim your compassion from those who frustrate you. You reclaim your fears and begin to understand their origins. And most importantly, you reclaim your peace. Because suddenly, nobody holds emotional power over you anymore. Nobody can make you feel unworthy or invisible or enraged unless there's a part of you that still believes it. Imagine someone insults you. In the past, you'd react. You'd feel attacked, disrespected, wounded. But now, with awareness, you pause. You ask, is what they're saying true? If not, why does it sting? What wound is it poking? What part of me hasn't healed? And just like that, the emotional charge begins to dissolve. You stop fighting ghosts. You start seeing clearly. Jung taught that self-knowledge is the only real protection from emotional suffering, not by building walls, but by removing distortions. When you see the world through projection, everything feels personal. When you see the world as it is, you move from reaction to reflection. And in that shift, you gain access to a different kind of power, not the power to control others, but the power to master your own mind. This is why Jung's path is not just psychological. It's spiritual. Because the end of projection leads to the beginning of unity. But you no longer see people as enemies or idols. You see them as mirrors. You see life as a classroom. Every interaction becomes a message. Every challenge becomes a lesson. And you stop needing the world to behave a certain way in order for you to feel okay. That's freedom. So here's a deep question you can ask yourself every day. What is the world reflecting back to me right now? That person who bothers you, what unmet need do they reveal? That person you can't stop thinking about, what hidden quality in you are they awakening? That judgment you feel, what part of you still feels threatened? The answers aren't always easy, but they are always worth hearing. Because once you make the unconscious conscious, the world stops controlling you. People stop triggering you. You stop losing yourself in the chaos. You become whole. And from that wholeness, you live not as a reaction, but as a response. Now, nobody and nothing can shake your center, but not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer projecting your inner war onto the outer world. You've called your shadow back home. You've faced the mirror, and you've reclaimed the one thing nobody could ever truly take from you, yourself. Beyond the mirror, how Jung's ultimate secret makes you unshakable in any situation once you've reclaimed yourself from projection, once you've faced your triggers, integrated your shadow and brought your unconscious material into awareness, something extraordinary begins to happen. The world around you doesn't change, but your relationship to it does. Life still brings conflict, disappointment, challenge, and unpredictability. People will still misunderstand you, judge you, reject you. But now, none of it owns you. Because you're no longer meeting life from your wounds, you're meeting it from your wholeness. That's what Carl Jung's ultimate secret unlocks. Not invincibility, but inner stability. A kind of unshakable clarity that nothing and no one can distort. When Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become," he was pointing to this very truth. The moment you stop reacting automatically to the world is the moment you begin responding from a deeper self, the self with a capital S. The one that isn't defined by stories, personas, or projections. It's not fragile, and it's not conditional. It doesn't need approval or control. It simply is, and it's been waiting for you beneath all the layers you've worn to survive. You might be wondering, what does this actually look like in practice? It looks like walking away from conflict without the need to explain yourself. It looks like choosing silence over retaliation when you see that someone's anger is about them, not you. It looks like setting boundaries not out of fear or resentment, but out of love for your energy. It looks like no longer needing to win arguments, be understood by everyone, or perform perfection to feel worthy. It looks like smiling when someone tries to provoke you because you recognize the pain behind their words and you've already made peace with your own. This kind of inner power doesn't come from ego. It comes from awareness. It comes from knowing that nothing outside of you can define you unless you give it permission. You've seen your own darkness. You've faced your projections. You've sat in the discomfort of silence, self-reflection, and emotional truth. And from that place, the external world loses its grip. You're no longer chasing peace. You are peace. And from that center, you can engage with life fully, not because you need anything from it, but because you're here to experience it consciously. Jung would say this is the beginning of individuation, not the end. It's the real path of the hero, not a detour. And it never ends. Because the unconscious always has more layers. The shadow always has new forms. But the difference is, now you want to face them. You no longer fear the unknown within you. You welcome it. Because you know that everything you meet, every person, every feeling, every challenge is another mirror. Another chance to see more clearly, to live more freely, to love more deeply. Ask yourself this, honestly, what would your life look like if you weren't afraid of being misunderstood? What if nobody's opinion could shake you? What if your peace was no longer dependent on circumstances, outcomes, or people acting a certain way? That's not a fantasy. That's what happens when you stop living through the lens of projection and start living from the self. That's what happens when you stop needing the world to reflect your worth because you've already found it inside. This is the place beyond the mirror, where you're no longer defined by your reactions, where you're no longer performing or proving, where you're simply being, present, aware, whole. And when you reach that place, you'll finally understand what Jung meant when he said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." You're no longer asleep. You're no longer affected. You're you, fully, finally, unshakably.